Hey everyone and welcome. Thank you for having us today and many thanks to the Sofia Game Jam for the invite. I see many passionate people here about video games considering it's Sunday, 11 a.m. So thank you also for being here and for everyone watching online. So today, I'm Rosen and Kamber, we are here to talk about the key components of building game worlds. So today, we'll share with you the process that you should have when building a game world, what are the key steps, what is important, the things that you should look for. Overall, what we will share is universal and should apply to pretty much any type of video game, almost regardless of the genre. Still, having said that, we will focus mostly on the action-adventure games, as they are, in those games, the world takes a lot more significant part. On one hand for the main protagonist and for the story, and on the other hand for the players that play the games. And we are Ubisoft Sofia. You see even from the first slide, we will have a lot of examples from Assassin's Creed. This is a title that we have a lot of hands-on experience with. We've worked on many Assassin's Creed titles, including pretty much all of the recent ones like AC Valhalla, AC Origins. Even in the moment, we are part of the production of the newly announced Assassin's Creed Mirage that is set in Baghdad. And this talk today also matches a really cool occasion that we have as we celebrate the 15th anniversary since the first game. So before we start, let's take a minute to remember some of the greatest moments in the Assassin's Creed history, but also to remember some of the worlds that those games took place in, as we will mention some of them later throughout the presentation. So, enjoy.
Are you ready for this? Of course you are. Come on, don't be shy. Don't let a fancy suit impress you. Don't let 1,000 fancy suits impress you. Be the thorn in history's side. Choose the greatest enemies. The captain. Sorry, mate. The emperor. The boss's boss. And make even greater friends.
Decent work, Leonardo.
Don't just pick a fight. Start a revolution. Get the bigger picture. Go too far. Go too fast. Face the invisible. The impossible. The unspeakable. Welcome to the greatest playground. History.
I hope this brought some fun memories with the Assassin's Creed games, recent and old. And the series visited many time periods and enabled players to leap into history and making history an actual playground. But you see, the great characters, the great stories, the success comes from the great character stories, the freedom of gameplay, but also a main pillar for the success for the Assassin's Creed titles. And the main part of this success is the world those games took place in. And overall, this is valid for pretty much all games. If your world is believable, if it's rich, if it's logical in its fantasy, it will immerse players in it. It will encourage exploration and it will encourage players to spend more time in those worlds. And ultimately, the players will remember this world long after they finish the game. So now as we approach the meat of the talk and the actual topic, I will give the word to Kamber as he will share our process. And from time to time, I will also jump in with some practical advices that I'm sure that you will find useful when building your own worlds. So, what is world building about?
World building is a process of creating imaginary worlds, but sometimes it's associated with creating entire universe with all the rules inside. Assassin's Creed, because it's rooted into the history, we place a lot of time creating these worlds, gathering different information about it, and try to recreate this as much as possible at some degree. Okay, having a rich world, what this brings to your game? It makes your character more credible because they are more grounded inside. It makes more narrative, more immersive, and overall your gameplay experience more varied and believable. But there is another way how your brand or game can benefit from the good, well-crafted world. This world can be used to be visited multiple times, not only through the game, but also through the movies, comics, books. Even you can create some events around them. So it's very good idea to have a good world, well-crafted.
It's very important, but what actually, from where to start? We will share what we found working for us in Ubisoft, and I'm sure other companies or teams have their own approach, but the steps that everyone takes are fundamentally similar. So a thing that you should remember here, probably take as a takeaway after this talk, is to pay attention at those steps. Neglecting or entirely skipping one of those steps carries huge risk down the road throughout your production. If you need to revisit one of your main pillars of your game, it would essentially mean either a partial or a full reboot of your game. For example, you decide that at some point you need this forest to be a lake or a desert. It needs a huge amount of rework. So depending on what project you're working on, decide how much time you should spend on each of those steps, but try not to skip any of them. So now, as we start, this is how your production will overall will look like, very roughly. We won't go through this, but what we will go through is what is happening with your world through those steps. And we will mostly focus on what is happening throughout the conception and pre-production towards the production. Because this is the most important time for your world to become alive, to put a solid foundation that the world builders later can use and bring this world to life. Don't expect to identify what your world will be throughout the production or in the debug. This is a phase of execution. So most of the talk today, it will be what is happening in the beginning. So currently, we are at that point just before the conception, and we need to choose what world we want to build.
Okay, generally speaking, we can identify two types of world in terms of player autonomy. The first type of world are the games with a lot of player autonomy. They can go anywhere at any time and consume the game at their own pace. This type of games are open world games, usually suspected. So games as Assassin's Creed, Witcher 3, Elder Scrolls, Elden Ring. Second type of game are the games with, let's say, more guided experience. They provide more tailored experience, and in this scenario world, is setting the stage for the narrative. Because the narrative experience and game experience is so important, everything should serve this. So you have to choose it. In our case, in the case of Assassin's Creed, we are, as you know, at most of the time we're doing open world games. So At the beginnings, let's say we choose the time period and the place where the future game will happen. We start gathering information about this place and this time period. So layer upon layer, we are gathering this giant database that in the future will be used to create our game. First, in general, we are separating the world information in two. First, natural layers, and second, human layers. In the natural layer, first you start getting information about the terrain type. What kind of terrain? Canyons, biomes, vegetation types, wild and domestic animals, weather, 4 seasons, 2 seasons, it depends. But you're gathering all this information. After that, you're looking about the natural events like northern lights, sandstorms, or earthquakes or volcanoes, such a thing that can provide very good gameplay in the future. After that, we are looking in human layer, so-called from a human layer. You should gather general information about the countries of the people, how they live, social structure, who are the rulers, and the economy of this place, what they produce, their art, their way to living, their deities. We are looking also in architecture, like private building, how the private buildings are, public buildings or production buildings look like. And we are also looking on religious building, because usually they are pretty big, elaborate, and we can use them easily as world landmarks to navigate the player inside the world. And there is a lot of other layers like warfare, how they fight, burial customs, greetings, production. Are they more agriculture or they more nomad tribes? The conflict inside, because it's a game, Assassin's Creed is a game about jumping over player faces and killing them. So it's a good idea to see different opportunities and gather information for this kind of events. And also we are looking for events from the past, present, and future of this time period, because it can inspire the team to create some cool stories. And don't forget important characters, because we are diving into the history. It's good to have this solid research.
One thing to know here, if you are making a sci-fi game, for example, you need to invent those layers by yourself. Currently, we are researching and exploring. But now that we have this...
Oh yeah, the most important question. This is the time when you start creating your game world. So having nice data is good, but what you should put inside your game? I will give an example here from ancient Egypt. And the major question is what this world makes cool. If you're doing ancient Egypt, it's a good idea to put pyramids inside, hieroglyphs, temples, river of Nile, different oases and whatnot. All the well-known information about the ancient Egypt. If there is an important city, this depends on the time period. If it's late Ptolemaic era, it's good to have Alexandria with Alexander Library and Pharaohs. So you should try to implement everything inside, but keeping in mind that you're creating a game. So you should be aligned with the creative vision, with the art direction, with the narrative, and with the gameplay. It's just 100 simple steps to build. You know, world game development is easy, but it also is pretty exciting. So, next step is?
Yeah. So, you're at the stage where you know what game your world needs. You also did your detailed research for this world and decided what to put in your game. Next step is what we call it's paper prototype. A keyword here is paper. You're still working on paper. Don't waste time, put anything in engine. It's a waste of time, because here at this stage, you're still making a lot of iterations on a very high level that if you're working in engine, it will take you a lot of time. that you probably might not have. So here, now that you know what you're putting in your world, you create your world map, how it will look like. But not only this, you incorporate it with everything else that you have so far, with everything else from the creative vision. So on top of your map, you put how your regions will be, but you put a high level of the narrative, where the quests will roughly go through, what locations will be visited at each stage of your game. Also, for the locations, you might have here and there a concept art or something to support your location. So, in a way, here you should have your first glimpse of your future game. So, what is very important is to have a very sober evaluation for yourself and for your team if this is working, if this is good enough. Because if something doesn't feel right, it's not logical in any way, don't expect to magically solve itself when you put it in engine. Quite the opposite, it will manifest itself and it will take times and times more to fix it. Imagine if you put your quest structure on top of your map and you decide that you need another island there, or to have the northern part not mountains but a forest or something else. It takes just a minute to take the rubber and change the map, but if you already have it in engine, it will take days, weeks to change it. So once you're ready with the paper prototype and you're good there, then you start working in engine with your blockout.
Yeah, blockout stage is pretty interesting because it's first time when you start walking inside your world and start imagining how this world will look like and start testing your paper prototype ideas. The general rules here is to play with the big shapes. Start with the terrain. Try to implement all the things, all the necessary big shapes in terms of landscape inside the engine. Iterate a lot until you're happy, because here you start playing level design on big scales. Like you want some city to be revealed after these mountains. You have to create this moment with slowly appearing. Generally speaking, because this is literally a fundamental of your game, the terrain, I mean. Once you're happy, then move on the next step, which is to indicate all the locations, all the big and mid-sized object, natural, man-made landmarks inside, and play it a lot to see what are the distance. For instance, if you put a desert, crossing the desert feels right because it's more different solitude experience there. If it's possible, try to put all your water bodies, rivers, seas. It will help a lot to see, because it will raise the question how I'm going to cross this river. Probably I can swim, but probably there are other ways to do it. And place all the towns just roughly, big shapes, nothing more, to see the distance, to measure the scope of the world and how it feels.
Once you're happy with that, we move to the production and actually start building the world. For us in Ubisoft, that would mean to ramp up all the teams, like level designers, level artists, quest team, lighting team, audio, and so on. For you, it would mean to ramp up just a few people, but don't do it if you're not happy with the previous stage. So, in its essence, the production is a lot more straightforward compared to the conception stage and the pre-production when you're doing all your research and deciding what your game is all about. Here, your focus is to execute. But in most cases, the production would be the longest period from your whole process of creating the game. So the advices I can give you here, probably the two advices, one on the production and one on the creative side, would be on one hand to try to keep your dependencies in check. What does this mean? It means finish with your level design first, and then make it beautiful with your artist, and only then put the lighting inside and sound and so on. Decide if you have a small town, a village, or a camp, where it is, as Kamber said, exactly. Your UFO landing site is here, and it serves my gameplay purpose well. And this village has 5 houses. They're facing this way, and once you're happy with this, then have an artist inside to make it beautiful, because if you later on see that you need 2 more houses and to rotate some of them, all the teams after this need to redo their work. It sounds easy, it's not so much, so you need to be careful about this. The other thing that you really need to keep an eye on and pay attention to is to try to keep a steady velocity for your production. Do you know what velocity is? Like a word? Yes? Okay. So it's something like speed, but not exactly. And the thing is that with good velocity, you're going to some specific point in the distance, specific spot. It's not just going fast and working, as Spock says in Star Trek, in Enterprise, increase speed and velocity. So what you should pay attention here is to have everyone from your team, from your world building team, to be well aligned with the creative vision that you decided in the beginning. Because trust me, like 8 months later throughout your production, 15 months later, 20 months later, you can easily lose yourself while working in a cave somewhere on the small details to forget about what you were thinking and what you decided upon like a year ago. So from time to time, take a step back, look if everything is shaping up just as you imagined in the beginning, and if needed, to have a correction course to where you want to be. And so you build your world, and with time, you see how your ideas from the beginning start to manifest themselves in the real world. Your ideas are there. Everything is going according to plan, which it never does. I don't know why I said that, but let's say in our case that everything is going according to plan, and you're playing your world. You have your beautiful terrain with various types and regions, your mountains, cities, small locations, and so on. And you play it, and you still don't feel it's good enough, or something just doesn't click. There is something that you can do here at this stage. That's, let's say, midway through the production, that we see way too often neglected in games, and it's a very powerful tool that I will leave Kamber to talk more about it. It's called...
And this is one layer on the top of all other layers. It's environmental storytelling, and it's a lot of fun to do, and let's say it's more enjoyable things to do when you start seeing your game and you wonder how to put more stories inside, more interesting stuff. Environmental storytelling is just to create a scene without words, without dialogue, without cinematics, and leave the player to connect the dots and understand what's going on. I love this example here because with a couple of traits, you already have a dramatic story. Like the sad story of the bunny, may rest in peace. But if you're creating a fictional game, probably this is a story of small Pegasus who just walk around on the stone and fly away. This is the power of the environmental storytelling, because you're leaving to the viewers or the gamers to decide what story happened there. Okay, you can use environmental storytelling to enrich the story of your characters, to make them like they're really part of this world because they are leaving their footprint inside. You can tell their story through their personal spaces. Also, you can tell the story of the world itself, how this world is at this stage, what leads you there? Are there any disaster? What's happened to be in this stage? So here we have two equal game places, but they are telling completely different story. One is probably more creative, chaotic. Other character is like to everything to be put in order, separated by colors. And you can tell the story of the characters that you're going to meet inside the narratives that makes them richer. They fill the gaps in their biography and show what kind of people they are. Or you can tell the story through environmental storytelling of the people who you never meet when you're playing the game. About the world, you can, because environmental storytelling is so, let's say, powerful and impactful, you can tell a different type of stories with a lot of emotional range, like some disastrous stories, someone who's party hard in the restroom, and some questionable type of games over there, and solitude. So the tools of environmental storytelling are the pacing of art. You can reuse different art and combine them to tell the story. Different scripted events, if you can have them. Like if you're walking and a couple of birds flying away and draw your attention over there, if you combine them with some creepy audio, all of the sudden players start creating stories inside their head. Cool. And next, the benefits of the environmental storytelling are pretty obvious. They are easy to produce, they are scalable. Like if Rosen comes and says, we don't have time for these 200 environmental storytellers, we can scale them down and put it in important places in order for the player to see them and experience them. Am I missing something, Roska?
Yeah, well, they're easy to do. They don't take players' control.
Yes.
So basically, you're playing. You just see it, and you decide how much time you can spend there and to interpret it for yourself what is going on. They're not obtrusive.
Yeah. They're fun to do, as I mentioned, and they can draw player attention. If you want to draw the player attention in a certain place, it's good to use environmental storytelling, and that's it, I think.
Yeah. As we wrap things up, probably the three things that you can take away from this talk is first, decide what world your game needs and do a thorough research on it. Then decide then make your paper prototype, and from there, as quickly as possible, have the big shapes, very rough silhouette of the world in engine. And three, as the production moves forward, try from time to time to step back and check in if everything is going in the direction that you initially wanted to go. So, yeah. Thank you guys for listening.
We got some time for questions.
We don't have a Q&A slide, but...
Yes, but if you got any questions, feel free to ask them. There is Philip with the mic.
Yeah, we have 2 mics. 2.
Specifically to you, Kamber, I wanted to ask, how did the experience writing about games help you out in the game-making world?
To writing about games? Mostly I am directing the teams, basically, and I'm initiating and I'm giving the structure of the teams and leaving to them to come up with some cool stories. I'm just giving them frame. But writing about games, it's just...
I was referring to the Games Workshop experience.
Games Workshop experience. Oh, well, here we have more experience. It's a lot of fun. Back in Gamers Workshops, there are a lot of cool dudes that we gathered together, and we're passionate about games, so we express our passion writing about it.
And that passion is what you brought to your experience in Ubisoft? Is that what?
Yes, this natural continuation of this passion.
I see. Thanks.
But it's quite a different beast to create games than to write about them.
Any other questions?
Other questions? I think we're wrapped.
Okay, no more questions. Let's thank Rosen and Kamber. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very
the
much.
lecture.
Thank you.